all living in a world gone geek. It's time to geek hard or go home. The podcast is real. Here's your host, Grounded Geek.
All right. Hey, welcome everybody to The Podcast is Real here on YouTube and Twitch and Facebook Live. We are recording for our podcast and doing our live show. The Podcast is Really Live, and we're glad that you could be here with us. It's me, Grounded Geek, also known as Jeff, and we're here to have a great show for you tonight. Happy Halloween to those of you out there who are celebrating. Maybe you are listening while giving out candy. We thank you for joining us for that. Maybe you're listening on the podcast the next day. We thank you for that as well. We've got a great show tonight, a great guest. I can't wait to get into the conversation and talk to him. It is just me. You're probably wondering, why haven't you introduced Utah and Aaliyah yet? They're actually engaging in trick-or-treat activities tonight. So, I think they might be tuning in here and there. So we may see them in the comments from time to time. But other than that, it's going to be me and the guest tonight. And we're going to have an old-fashioned film discussion that I'm really excited to get into. This film that I've seen, and the man who has helped bring it back, bring it out of the depths of darkness where it has been residing for since 1938. It's going to be an exciting time to talk about. Before we get to that, though, I do want to just let you guys know about some cool things that are coming up. November 5th and 6th, every year around that time, we do a charity event called Extra Life. Extra Life is a 24-hour gaming marathon where we raise money for Children's Miracle Network hospitals. And for us here in Cleveland, that's UH Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital, which those of you who know me personally know it's a hospital that's very close to my heart. I worked there for many years, worked with kids, got to know a lot of the families there, and they were instrumental in helping my family as my daughter was going through chemo in the midst of the pandemic here last year. So Rainbow is very close to my heart, and we're trying to raise some money for the hospital through Extra Life. So Extra Life is a Children's Miracle Network hospital program that you can actually sign up and do your own marathon to raise money for your local children's hospital, wherever you happen to be in the world. So if you are somewhere like our guest in Seattle, there's a Seattle Children's Hospital. I'm not sure the name of it, but it has, if it's part of the Children's Miracle Network hospitals system, you can raise money for them. And you can find out all about it at www.extra-life.org. And you can sponsor me or Utah or the World Gone Geek as a team to help us with Rainbow if you'd like to do that. That's a way you can participate. If you're not, maybe you're not a gamer, you don't want to do, you want to participate. But I wanted to let everybody know that that's happening on Friday. So Friday at around 7:30 p.m., I'm going to be going live, and we're going to talk for a little bit about Extra Life. We're going to kind of try to recruit people to get on board and to donate. And then I will be starting the marathon at 8 p.m. and we're going to be playing for 24 hours straight until 8 p.m. Saturday. So that's coming up this weekend. Utah will be starting his marathon at 8 a.m. Saturday morning and going through 8 a.m. Sunday morning. So between the two of us, we're going to cover a lot more than 24 hours, but we're going to overlap for about 12 hours there so we can play some games together, but that we can also be broadcasting even longer. So hope you'll join us. We'll be on YouTube. I will be on YouTube broadcasting live for that. And you're going to want to show up early. You're going to want to be there at 7:30 when we launch this thing. I'm going to be announcing a very cool giveaway that we're doing. And actually, I'm going to announce it now, but we're launching it Friday night. And I have here in my hands a Google Stadia Premier Edition. Okay. What is Google Stadia? It's literally, this is a console to play in 4K video games, literally streaming over the internet. So you don't have to have a big expensive console under your TV. You just have to have a really good internet connection, and you can play games on the Stadia Premier Edition. Now you might think, I don't think that's going to work. You may be skeptical about the Stadia. Well, I have a video that will be coming out on Thursday that will show you me unboxing my Stadia and playing some games. I've played Cyberpunk on this thing, Resident Evil Village, Far Cry 6, and they are smooth as butter. That's amazing that you can play these big games. In fact, some of you may know that when Cyberpunk came out, there were all kinds of glitches and problems with it on all consoles and PC. And the one place you could play it the smoothest was Stadia. So I guess on those Google servers, it just ran better. I don't know, but it's cool. Check it out on Thursday. Make sure you subscribe to our channel so that you'll get notified when that happens. And when that drops, you'll see my unveiling of Stadia and how it works. I'll give you a review. And then we're going to give one away during the month of November. And you can find out how to enter that by being there for our live stream starting at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Friday night. So I hope that we'll see you there. Now tonight we are talking to a man who has composed music for lots of independent films. And he is going to tell us the story of how he came across this film that we're going to be talking about tonight. It's called As the Earth Turns. It's going to premiere on Turner Classic Movies premiere. It's never been on there before at midnight tonight Eastern here. And it's going to be awesome. So you should check it out. There are places you can watch it, but Turner Classic Movies that's the big time. And it's really awesome that it's getting this kind of attention now. We're going to talk a little bit about it. We're going to find out how he even knew that this film existed and how it came into the forefront, how he composed a brand new score for it. And now it's going to be for the masses to view on Turner Classic Movies. So before we do that, let's take a look at the trailer. Hey, Jeff here, interjecting to let you know that we're not going to play the trailer here on the podcast version. If you want to check it out, though, check the show notes. The link is there. Okay, back to the show. Awesome. And on the show is Ed Hartman. Welcome to the show, Ed.
Hey, yeah, baby.
That was exciting. So this is the film that's from 1938, as directed by Robert H. Lyford. Right now, I think we have the man, the only person on earth who knows more about Robert H. Lyford than his actual family members.
That's true. Actually, I know more than they do on the line.
Probably true. And so I can't wait to talk to you about it. Like as a film buff, like this is exciting to watch. Like just the effects and the special effects that he used and the little scratched film, scratch negative so that you can get that electricity effect that he did. Yeah. These were things that were just kind of like brand new and thought of back at the time that he made this. But this was from 1938, right? A silent film. Yeah,
it was started in 37, and then it took a number of months to film it. He would. So the story about Lyford is this is a guy who grew up in Seattle, in kind of a upper middle class family, and he got involved in storytelling from a young age. I mean, he could line up a bunch of books on a shelf and make up a story about all the people in the room based on the books. He was just brilliant as a storyteller, and then he got into stage plays. And he had I have a documentary called "It Gets in Your Blood," and that's all over the film circuit or the film festival circuit right now. I don't know if you can see that. Whatever. Yeah. Anyway, so I've been delving into his story. So he wrote like all these stage screenplays. He had in his basement. He had a theater with a proscenium, a 12-foot proscenium. Appropriately, it was an Asian theme, and a few weeks ago, I was in LA screening my documentary at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood.
That's
so
pretty
everything
amazing.
has come full circle in this story.
Yeah.
So the guy, he was just into this, and As the Earth Turns was his 9th film before he went pro.
Wow.
And he was actually a member of the Amateur Cinema League. There was such a thing. This was 16 millimeter filmmaking, not 8 millimeter and Super 8, which is what I did as a kid in the 70s. I almost went into filmmaking.
Wow.
Now I'm in it anyway.
Yeah.
So, but he went to work for Disney, and he directed an Academy Award winning film, The Titan, which I can show here, maybe. Yeah, something like that. And with what's his name? Robert Snyder, famous documentarian. Mm-hmm. And he worked for Disney again, and he worked in the Mideast, did all sorts of stuff. But the first 20 years are the stuff he did that were super creative as a kid with his friends and family. And that's what's mind-blowing about this movie is that he put this thing together all himself and was able to put together a cast and crew. This wasn't the biggest film he made. There's another one called The Sea Devil, which I don't have. I own the film estate on this. I literally have his films. And in fact, where a lot of this came from was a 16 millimeter film, a couple of films called Ritual of the Dead and The Scalpel. These were earlier films.
Wow.
And I literally have the film cans. Everything's been scanned. And those are going to wind up at probably the UCL archive or UW or something like that soon.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stories floating around in here. I just matter keeping track of them all. I've been on this thing for 3 years.
Wow.
On that. So, but Lyford was a very fine filmmaker. He was an editor, he was director, he did everything. And that's why Disney got into him, because he thought, man, this guy really knows his tech. He did special effects for Fantasia. He did model stuff for him. And if you look at As the Earth Turns, a lot of those skills he learned about model making, and he used that for the artists to draw from. Yeah. And there's some great stories about that.
Well,
learning.
And that was one of the things that fascinated me about this film. Now, see, I mean, you talk about working with, 8 millimeter back when you were in young in the 70s, and we had 8 millimeter too. I wasn't allowed to touch it though. My dad used it, but by the time I started making my own films, and I do video production now on the side, it was a VHS camera that my grandfather bought me when I was a senior in high school, or junior in high school. So I started making films with that. But this film reminded me so much of those days when we were trying to make our own movies and just making things, but just because of how much fun it looked like it was. You could see how some really young people are playing older characters and, with makeup and things like that, which was awesome. It looks like a student production, but the production value of it, especially for the time, is so impressive. Like you said, the models, I mean, even in that trailer, we saw the kind of the explosions in the mountains, and we saw the things falling down. Just the fact that he was doing this at 20, it really humbles me at the stupid things that I made when I was 20.
I mean, I was attempting animation, single frame, and I didn't even have a single frame kind of thing. And it was pretty kid oriented, The great quote we got from the LA Times was, if Steven Spielberg had a 16 millimeter camera when he was young, this is what he would have done.
Yeah.
And that's pretty stupendous when you think about it.
Sure.
So, I thought he did a tremendous job with what he had. And people ask, well, what was 1937, 38? Why wasn't this a sound movie? Well, sound movies were not really available for 16 millimeter at that time. He wasn't in Hollywood. He was in Seattle when he made this thing. And there's a lot of Seattle locations in it, like Gas Works, which was a gasification plant, and Boeing Field. He had access to planes. I mean, this guy, in fact, the Gas Works, which is still around as a park, has some remnants there. One of the scenes, the scene where they're kind of running away from the thing, they were literally running away from the guards because there was no such thing as film permits anyway. It's like, who the heck are you?
I mean, they were guerrilla filmmaking before that was a thing.
Way before it was anything. Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
And I got stories all over that. And I'm writing a biopic script about this, a
That's
screenplay.
Awesome.
And that's the next step on this thing, to kind of explore his first 20 years. And it's just hilarious. I mean, it'll be, I look at it as Andy Hardy meets Orson Welles.
Wow.
And kind of a similar story to the movie Tucker. I always like that movie. So it's kind of a biopic like that. So, again, the film is tremendous. And then the interesting thing about my score is about halfway into scoring it, we discovered, because I became producer halfway in as well, that he had been synchronizing dual turntables to a 60 millimeter projector and even camera, trying to attempt film synchronization, even doing dialogue.
Wow.
And that, of course, it sent chills in my skull, because all of a sudden I'm not working with a deceased filmmaker. He may have a playlist. And what I did find out from his son Chris, who's helped a lot on all this stuff, there's an interview in the documentary with him, was that Lyford liked Dvorak, Tchaikovsky, all sorts of things, and Stravinsky, and my score is reminiscent of all those things. I was kind of drawn to early 20th century, and 19th century classical music with a little bit of jazz mixed in.
Yeah.
And that would have been exactly what he wanted. But he literally was trying to synchronize music the best we can. And that it's possible that his experiments with that were also of interest to Disney, because Disney was aware that the military and industrial are going to need sound possibilities for 60 millimeter, which is quite a bit cheaper than 35.
Yeah.
If you want to geek out.
Yeah. Well, so I really want to find out kind of like how you even kind of got involved in this and how you found this. But before we do that, let's go back even further. Tell us how you got involved with film scoring at all. How was tell us a little bit about your past and your love for music and how this has kind of grown into your career.
Well, I moved to Seattle in 1979 from Chicago, and I went into percussion as an instrument. I have a studio with percussion instruments and still teach to this day. And I almost went into film school because I had been making, cheesy Super 8 movies and stuff like that. And I was always struggling that I didn't have music. So I would do the same thing Lyford did. I would have albums played on a stereo, synchronized as best I could, or maybe reel-to-reel tape eventually. Anyway, so I moved to, I went to Indiana University and got a degree in percussion performance, but I was always composing when I was there. And sometimes it would piss off the professors because I was supposedly a performance degree and not a composing degree. In fact, they threw a really high quality composer faculty on one of my recitals, and he brought my 20-minute piece down to 6 minutes or something like that. So I've learned my lesson. Anyway, do not do what you're not supposed to do. So I wound up again moving out to Seattle, but I was always involved in composing. I even started composers series out here and been involved in organizations. Over the last X amount of years, I ran a drum shop, but I was always a performer, but I always liked writing music. A lot of it was jazz tunes, things like that. But I loved writing classical. What happened to me is, as digital recording took over, because all the stuff I was doing with, say, cassette 4-track in the 80s was never really distribution level quality. It was okay. You could kind of pull it off with DBX and stuff. But when things went digital and, around the turn of the century, that's a weird thing to say, right? Anyway, I had a Tascam 8-track, and all of a sudden my tracks really started to get better, and I could release them. I could do anything I wanted to these things. And some of the music that I'd created in the 90s and beyond started to get in film and TV. And that started to make me think, man, maybe I should do that. And over the years, I've had a lot of tracks on film and television. I have a football marching band tune called Football Funk, if you search it out. And it was done on the Tascam. And it was on The Blind Side and Scooby-Doo, The Mystery Begins. It was just on Legacies.
Wow.
About 2 weeks ago, this first of the season. So that thing just keeps getting placed. And it's brilliant to get that kind of work. And then as I got into Logic on my Mac, all of a sudden the concept of synchronizing music to sound started to appear. And I realized, oh my God, I can finally get music and image together. And so I started to do that. And I was experimenting with YouTube videos, things like that. And then eventually I was comfortable enough to do it. I started to get hired as a composer to score films that were in festivals and things like that. And that got me more and more involved. And over the next 20 years, I guess, I've done quite a bit. And I've done, features and documentaries. And really what's evolved now is I've moved from just being a score composer to producer. So I've learned the other side of what goes on, and it is entirely another game out there. So, once you've learned how to score a movie, you got to understand what the film producer and director do. They have to take that film and present it to festivals and distribution, all the rest of it. So it has been a massive evolution for me, and it's hilarious that I'm now back to being a movie, filmmaker,
right?
Which is what I always really wanted to do. And I think for me, one of my big interests as a composer was film music from the beginning. I just love image and music together. 2001, ironically, was not released with the original score. In fact, poor Alex North was fired from that project without his knowing, and went to the London premiere of 2001 not seeing his score there. That's a bummer, huh? Thanks, Kubrick. But Kubrick was right. I mean, his score was iconic, and things like that really gets you interested in classical music when you start hearing the Blue Danube and you see spaceships. I mean, how can't you fall in love with either of those things at the same time? It's like psychologically impacts your head. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, music is so important to films. I mean, there's so many like good examples of like where people, especially now on YouTube, people can like do all these, cool things, but they'll come out and they'll remove the music from a scene. And it it's a completely different experience, or change the music. And now what used to be a comedy is kind of scary, or whatever might have occurred, but never more so in a silent movie, right? Which is what As the Earth Turns is. The music is one of the characters of a movie like that. I mean, it's the entire spirit of the film comes from that, because there's no spoken dialogue. So tell me what that was like, trying to kind of like come up with the emotions that you needed to put through in the music like that.
Well, when I started this project, and we'll get into the history of it, but when I started this, it was really just a family legacy sort of a thing. So there was not a lot of pressure on me to do anything one way or the other. And I had no director to work with. So I developed themes. I can play those for you a little bit. And just worked on them. And my process is to kind of go through the score. I'm a good improviser. I'm not the world's greatest piano player or anything like that, but I have good enough skills that I can pull off what I need. And then I'll go back and orchestrate what I need to do on that. So there's a whole processing scoring that I do, and everybody's a little different. I mean, John Williams to this day uses pen and paper and encodes, and he sends it to his orchestrators, and oh my God, how do you do that? I heard he watches a movie, he watches a scene once, goes back and scores it by memory. I mean, I can't even understand that.
Wow.
So, I'm busy there looking at everything that's going on, trying to create stuff, going over it 1,000 times, and trying to lock in hit points. So when somebody goes like that, something happens. So there's a real process to that. One thing that's very interesting about digital music, like when you were scoring, if you were scoring a silent film for a live organ or orchestra or something like that with a silent movie, or even in a theater that was showing a 16 or 35 millimeter, there's always the sound of the projector, that sort of thing. But with digital, it's dead silent. There's nothing. I mean, there's no hiss of the soundtrack or anything. So if you lay out with music, it is disturbing. I mean, the audience is going to go, what happened to the sound? So I learned I could not leave it out entirely. There's only one point where I dropped it at a very key point, a very interesting transition. And I had to really time that carefully so I didn't leave it out too long where somebody's going to freak out that maybe there's something wrong with their stereo,
Yeah.
So, this whole thing has been a challenge for me. And so therefore, this is a 45-minute film. And it was maybe longer, we don't know, although we have the definitive cut from the director, and that's through a number of resources that have been checked and double-checked. And I discovered 15 minutes more of the film after a couple of weeks, which means I had to rescore a whole bunch.
Wow.
And that was on the trailer talks about newly found footage. The whole movie is newly found,
Sure.
And then after that, we were at a film festival, the Seattle Film Festival. It premiered at the Egyptian Theater, 1915 Theater, appropriately. They really did a nice job. And I had some of the families there of the actors, and they let me know they had another cut of the film. Like,
what?
Wait a minute. Were my edits correct? I'm freaking out there, and we got a copy of it. And I know mine is the original because it doesn't have the physical edits in it and a few other things. And I was only off by 30 seconds of one scene that was not in the cut, which I put in the DVD. So if you want to see that, the only place that exists on the planet besides my computer is on this DVD, which you'll have to buy.
Gotcha.
and also on that is also other films that started this whole thing, these other short scenes that were found in another thing. And we can get to that.
Yeah.
So it's a process, and I love film scoring. I really do. The only thing I might like better is film producing, because then I can control the whole damn thing. And when you score, you're not always in control. I've scored films where half or more of your score gets thrown away, or you have to score each scene 7 to 20 times.
Yeah.
And most composers, film composers say if you haven't been fired from a project, you're not a film composer yet. And I've been fired. So,
well, there you go.
A professional.
So tell us then, I guess, how you got involved with the families here. How did you come across this film in the first place?
Well, it came to me. So in 2017, I closed my drum shop, the Drum Exchange, luckily before the pandemic, thank God. And in 2018, I'd been teaching a student back in the drum shop, a high school kid, for a couple of years. Anyway, and he moved on and graduated and all the rest of it. I think that was the end of that. And then in 2018, a student of mine, adult student, came in, Kim Lyford Bishop, and she was very, very nice, and she wanted to take some hand drum lessons and things like that. So I said, sure, great. So she'd been taking lessons for a couple of months or whatever. And at one point, and you can hunt this down on YouTube, you go to my YouTube channel, there's a song called Can't Stop, Gonna Drop. And it's basically a track I did, kind of a Danny Elfman style score. And I just threw it against a Buster Keaton scene, College, and which is a great movie, silent film. And it's public domain, so I could do what I wanted with it. And it perfectly synced it. I mean, it was weird. I didn't do any editing to the film. It just magically worked, and that can happen. I mean, all music will sync in some way. So anyway, I played it for her in a lesson. I said, hey, this is something I did. And her eyes widened. Would you be interested in scoring something? Yeah, this is what I do. Why not? And it turned out she had been given the film estate from again, other members of the family. They had, well, this goes back further than that. Let me take it back one more step. So in 2013, in the Classic Horror Film Board, you want to really talk about geeky stuff, there was a discussion started, and I've just been talking to everybody about that. Anyway, a couple of key people in there were talking about this video called Monsters Crash the Pajama Party.
Okay.
This is a story, man, for the ages. Anyway, this is a something weird video, and that's important to remember. You'll be tested on this after.
Okay.
So anyway, they had discovered there's a couple of scenes in this weird Halloween video. Boy, what a coincidence. Halloween, right?
Yeah.
And it's a weird, wacky, it was a DVD and a video. And the DVD, I think it was VHS first, has one of those menus where you have to find your way through it, and it's got all sorts of surprises and stuff like that. It's pretty hilarious. Anyway, there's two scenes, and they were trying to figure out who did these movies. And one of them's a mummy kind of a scene, and the other one's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of thing. And they finally discovered it was this guy, Richard Lyford. Okay. Eventually, they contacted the family, and that's what started this ball rolling. And then Kim got involved, got the film estate. Literally, Chris drove the films to Seattle.
Wow.
And I may be doing that down to LA. I don't know. So anyway, that's how it got to me. And then I became producer. And again, it wasn't even intended to go anywhere, but it came out pretty good. And we had sufficient, finances to put it in, to have the music score mixed professionally at Clarendon, now Formosa in Seattle. And they did a spectacular job of taking, something I can do on my computer and really making it cinema quality. And it was going to need to be, because we knew it was going to start to be in some major festivals. So that happened. We did a private screening at Boeing Field, no less, in a theater there.
Wow.
And then we started putting it in festivals. And it was shown all over the world. And 122. Actually, there's another festival, Shock Fest, which is going to play both my documentary, It Gets in Your Blood, and As the Earth Turns, in December 10th, I think, online. That'll be a first to do that. So, there was one other place that those have appeared together, and that was when we did a 7-day, get this, Oscar qualifying run.
Oh, wow.
In Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I'm not making this up. I couldn't. This is a movie in itself. So, no, we actually booked the Laemmle theaters based on the Carl Laemmle family. Famous, talk about Dracula and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Which Lyford played when he was 7 years old. The circles go. So, anyway, we did that. And I put together a live screening of this plus all of these other films. So it was kind of a good, 70, 80-minute program. And I'm intending to take that into theaters if there's film groups, film schools, could be retirement homes, things like that. Theaters actually do more theatrical runs with all this stuff because it's really fun when you watch them together.
Yeah.
And that's what's on the DVD pretty much as well. So anyway, we did that. We did get it into the Oscars that year in 2019. And of course, it didn't get nominated, but that wasn't the point.
Right.
1,000 DVDs were produced that got in the hands of directors and producers. So I'm hoping some of them have seen it, may watch tonight.
Yeah.
I do know of some of them that did receive it. Joe Dante, who did great movies. It was one of the Twilight Zone movie guys and Gremlins. This guy's just infamous. Anyway, I got a nice note from him saying, yeah, I finally got around to watching that damn Oscar DVD. And he said, I at first thought it was a fake, that you had faked this whole thing. And this is not the only one. You look on Amazon and people are like, this is a joke, man.
Right.
I'm like, if I could fake a movie this damn good, I'd be Spielberg, man. You cannot be this authentic. You just can't do it. I'd have to shoot with 60 mm. It would cost too much to do that.
Right.
So anyway, it's gotten out there. And again, hopefully if the biopic can get out there, there may be some serious interest out there in Hollywood because this is such a spectacular story of his youth.
Well, then,
so anyway, so it got in all these festivals, and then we achieved distribution, indie rights, as you saw on the leader there, and then I arranged the Turner Classic Movies broadcast myself. I got to know people there, and we've been waiting patiently. Ironically, they had the access to the film starting in 2020, but by delaying it to this year, Silent Sundays also synchronized with Halloween for the first time.
Yeah,
and perfectly made an opportunity available.
That's cool.
So man, again, that's how this thing evolved. And then one other really synchronicity event. Well, there's a whole bunch of them. You can read the whole thing. Go to the website. There's backstory, but these films. These rare films that were from this company, Something Weird, that made the video, right? Okay, so I started to track down Something Weird, which incredibly is a Seattle company. And it took about 6 months. And finally, they responded. The widow of the guy who founded this thing, who was a wonderful caretaker of old films, she contacted me, say, I still have these films, and she's transitioning out of some of this stuff. And it turned out that her office was 2 miles away from my house.
Wow.
So these Lyford films found their way back to me. I mean, if that isn't incredible, and I have the rest of the stock 20 feet away from me, of amazing stuff in there. And we don't have a lot of his early stuff. I'm still looking for the other half of some of these movies and 6 more that he did.
Right.
And I'm dying to find them because as I write these biopics, it'd be great to actually have the films that he did.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
so that's how it occurred initially anyway.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned that he, speaking of Dracula, that he played him when he was 7. Yeah. That was one of the things I noticed. I watched the short documentary that you made. And it is fascinating. Like, just some of the things, he was kind of a little bit of a prodigy when it comes to that creative process, as far as
absolutely
staging his own production of Dracula at such a young age. And then you mentioned a few things in the documentary that I don't know if you're planning to put them in the biopic or not, but I would love to know more of the story about how he, I guess they did it at their school, the Dracula, and they got in trouble for it.
That's one of the great stories because he had been playing Dracula for honestly a couple of years from the time he was 7, and he started to develop the screenplay for it. He wrote his own, of course, and As the Earth Turns was technically based on another book, The Man Who Rocked the Earth from 1915, but it was nothing like that book. It would have been an unwatchable film.
Yeah.
It would have been like trying to make an Isaac Asimov movie.
Right.
Anyway,
which the Foundation is on Apple right now. So.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. It's always good. Yeah. So anyway, so he wound up putting on this play. This is all absolutely part of the biopic. I mean, this is such wonderful theatrical material. So imagine him, in 3rd grade, maybe, I don't know, putting on Dracula, and his home theater and having people. I've actually toured his house. I got to know the caretakers of the house, the owners of the house now. And they're into it. They're sending me stuff.
That's
I'm having
great.
a wonderful time working with them. And I did a big tour, and I think I caught some orbs. I'm not kidding. Okay. So anyway, so that theater was in the basement, and people would come in from an outside access. I think that's how they got in. I'm starting to understand the geography of the room, of the space. Anyway, so he went and took this thing. Somehow they wanted to see this thing. So I think he beefed it up a little bit and he did this production. And this is like straight out of the Addams Family at camp, right?
Right.
And so they put on this play, and, there's a spewing blood ending. And they got kicked out of school for 2 days.
That's so funny.
The whole cast. Man, I mean, geez. So, he understood that, if you're going to do something, you do it right. He was way too ahead of his time, though, young for what he was doing. But
right.
he was an entertainer thoroughly, and he was very, very good with makeup and design, set design, all of that stuff. And I think that's what you see in As the Earth Turns. You go, wow. How they do that. And there's a lot of explosions in it. And he was into caps of explosive stuff.
Yeah. Well, there's another story. I don't want to spoil all the stuff on the stories on the documentary. There's another story in the documentary it was his son, right? That tells that story about an explosion.
Yeah. No, we'll tell it. Why not? So you watch the documentary. And no, it's a key scene in the biopic. But basically, he's working at Disney and he's working on Fantasia. And Disney wants a model of, we believe, was the volcano scene from Fantasia. And so Lyford, being so acquainted with dynamite and stuff like that, actually, he used magnesium, nice and safe. And he blew up on the lot, on Buena Vista lot, a bunch of dirt. Anyway, and he slowed it down. He had good quality cameras for the first time in his life. And anyway, so he got called into Disney's office within a few minutes. And Mr. Disney would like to see you. It was Walt.
Yeah. And
Walt had really taken was really interested in Lyford as a director and everything else. He knew that Lyford was going to be great. And so he got brought into the office, and Disney looked at him. He said, were you kind of experimenting with that thing we were talking about earlier? And he goes, yeah, I did. I did. And he said, well, at precisely 103 or whatever, all of my animators on the lot, were in mid art, and they went, he lost God knows how many thousands of dollars of artwork at that one. He's like, so you better bring me in the wet stock like now. Anyway, they brought it in. It was fine. It was really, and he was like, yeah, just don't ever do that again, man. But that was commitment. That's what he did. And it's a really, he had the guts to pull it off. And he did that kind of stuff on As the Earth Turns.
Yeah.
There's stories that are not on the doc of, that are going to be part of the process. And this is what I'm desperately trying to find, are as many backstories to these early films as I can. And Chris, his son, really has helped out a lot with those. He wrote about this stuff. There's articles in American Cinematographer that got a lot of this started. That's where some of the Classic Horror Film Board guys discovered a lot of this stuff and turned us on to all of that. And for a 20-year-old to write in American Cinematographer is a little bit of a deal too.
Sure.
Because if you think about it, I've known filmmakers, all of their life are still trying to get in that rag. So, he was brilliant on there. And we keep uncovering more articles and mentions of him. If anybody comes up with Richard Lyford articles or films especially, I would love to be in touch with you.
Sure.
And you can get to me through that or Ed Hartman Music, my website. Oh, and there is one end on Hartman, just to correct what I noticed, I think on one of the YouTube things. So anyway.
Oh, I'll fix that. If that's
never
the
been
case.
A double N. Anyway.
Awesome. Yeah. No, I do think that he was clearly ahead of his time. And, in the documentary, it talks about how he basically was a contemporary of of Orson Welles. They were both kind of coming up at the same time, and coincidentally died the same year. But the stuff that he does in this silent movie, some of the camera angles, some of the canted angles, those were things that people weren't doing in movies.
No, this is 1937 and Citizen Kane is 1940.
Right.
And you look at this one scene in there and it's, that caught me right away. Mm-hmm. When I first saw that, I was startled. I thought, there's something wrong with the film. And then oh no, my God, he's doing this anticipating Wells. Mm-hmm. I don't remember ever seeing anybody do that. I mean, I think some silent films probably did. There was, especially European films, and I'm sure, Wells wasn't the first one to invent any of that stuff.
Right.
But he perfected it.
Sure.
But even the angles, when you look at Pax Rising, mm-hmm. that's definitely shot from the ground up mm-hmm. To create a kind of an illusion of height and all the rest of that. And of course, to do all of the models, you have to create really good edits from live footage to model footage. He does that well with the train and stuff like that. I mean, if you watch it and you go, well, that was, whatever. You could write off these effects in a minute. Mm-hmm. But you can write off Flash Gordon effects, which was very popular in the same year as this came out. I mean, the crazy spaceships. Sure. I would watch that stuff as a kid. It was on TV all the time. So, with fireworks coming out of the rear, so he really pulled it off as well as he could. Mm-hmm. And he never, he knew this was his amateur work. And and the reason why it was never released, people say, well, why don't we see this? Why didn't he get it out? Because again, he considered it an amateur film for him.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, he had no way to release it if he wanted to.
Sure.
It was in Seattle, mm-hmm. And it was 16 millimeter. I mean, there was just no indie distribution. You couldn't call up Amazon and say, let's put it on your platform,
Right.
He would walk it around. He did play it at Franklin High School. We know that. And probably at a few theaters locally, but it was just silent. Maybe he ran some records, started to spin some records while playing it. I don't know.
Right.
I know that I just found out how he got involved with Disney. And I had thought that maybe Disney read his articles or something like that. But actually, this is new information. Disney's barber, not kidding. Disney's barber had seen one of probably As the Earth Turns film. As he was in an amateur cinema club, and Lyford had moved to L.A. In fact, Lyford stayed at the Glendale Y, which was a block away from where we showed the film for our 7-day. And I went over to that Y to say hi and say, you know what? You had somebody here 80 years ago
That's neat.
that made this movie.
That's
so
neat.
Yeah. So anyway, and that's how they got it. And Lyford actually screened his film, probably As the Earth Turns, in a screening booth at Disney for Disney and his wife. And that was the entrance there. And he came in the mailroom. I mean, that was the only place he could technically come in traffic. They called it traffic. But I think immediately Disney, I want you to work on this. And they sent him all over the place.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
In fact, when he stayed in L.A., I found this out from Chris, that his roommates, one of the guy was like a National Geographic photographer, and the other one is the guy who started Big Boy Hamburgers. Yeah, wow. There's season 2 right there.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great old Hollywood story, and I mean, the biopic is kind of a great idea. Hollywood, they love to make movies about themselves. Look at Mank, who just came out last year. That was a good
movie. I love that.
Yeah. They love old Hollywood movies. Get a lot of attention there. And this is an interesting one. It's one that's,
and it's not really old Hollywood. I mean, it's really before it's Seattle, which means for me, if I get everything I want from a production, I don't know how much I'd be involved in it. I don't know. I may sell a script. I may wind up produce it. I don't know. But what I'd love to see is a combination of Hollywood and Seattle. And Seattle's kind of coming into its own right now. There's a big push.
Yeah.
You get the incentives back and a reorganization of the film commissions and things like that. Because so much of the work's been going up to Vancouver. And there's a ton of wonderful filmmaking people and community here. that are incredible. And so if you can get those people work, then you're doing exactly what Lyford did.
Yeah.
And you've come full circle and are producing indie films, but having the connections with Hollywood so that they are not just, going to wind up on a streaming platform somewhere and actually get this film. I mean, I would hope that a biopic is going to have a theatrical run as it would deserve.
Sure.
And I think it would be a very popular film. I really do. It'll be very fun. Again, Tucker is kind of my model for that. That was a fun movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I personally, I mentioned at the, top of the hour, I'm a film buff. I love this kind of stuff. If you're at all a movie buff who likes old movies, likes to watch these, and you enjoy learning how kind of that process of making movies, that's always been a hobby of mine. You've got to watch this tonight. It is available out there on the web in certain places, but you can watch it on Turner Classic Movies at midnight tonight Eastern. I guess that's 9 p.m.
9 o'clock
for
Pacific,
you, right?
which
Yep.
is great. Yeah, my only thought is I wish it had been a little earlier so it wasn't going to be so late on the East Coast.
Yeah.
But hey, that's the way it goes, man.
Well, I might stick around and watch it myself, even though I've seen it. But I'm kind of interested to see how it's packaged and shows on the big screen, TV there.
I was really hoping to interview with Jacqueline Stewart, who does Silent Sundays, and that didn't come together.
Yeah.
So I'll be very interested to see what her introduction is like.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
Hopefully it's accurate.
Right.
Hopefully they have enough stuff for me. There's really no other place to go.
Sure.
It's funny. At some point, somebody was talking to me and said, "Oh yeah, I know somebody who was studying Lyford in college." I mean, I don't know. So I don't think so.
Huh.
There's no, unless they followed some of my emails.
Yeah.
And today, I mean, this thing goes on. So today, the Seattle Times, we got a nice little. See, this is so weird. I can't even do it. But anyway, Seattle Times has a. It's just what is it about it? Just that you can't find the person. Anyway, Seattle Times has an article in the Sunday paper or whatever on there. So we've been moving forward on a lot of things at once here. I mean, there's tons happening almost daily on this film.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to answer questions. And I'm looking for filmmakers to score films for as well. That's always something I like to do.
Yeah.
And I'm help them with film festivals and all the rest of it because I've learned that. And It Gets in Your Blood has just gotten to its 109th festival and its 87th award nomination.
Wow.
And if you go to Ed Hartman Music, there's a link to It Gets in Your Blood, that page. And it lists all the screenings, all of the festivals it's in, all the links and things like that. So you can watch that, as well, or pick up the DVD if you want to get it all for home. And this is a killer DVD. I had people involved with doing the artwork and all the rest of it. It was really fun to put it together. A lot of work.
Yeah.
But what's in it is the trailer, the film, the missing footage, my documentary, plus home movies by Richard Lyford that he did at wartime with his wife.
Wow.
Pretty funny little film. And then I have a little short that's also on YouTube called Let's Go to the Kitchen. There was a pandemic theatrical intermission movie, let's go to the kitchen sort of thing. And it was this kitschy track that I kind of put a bunch of stuff on. And that same track was in the Twilight Zone, second season, last episode, the one about that had the characters from it's a cookbook.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wait, so the song
that was used in Twilight Zone, the reboot, the season 2, the last episode, which is really one of the best ones. It was very critically rated with those characters, the aliens.
That's interesting.
It's a funny and they use this 50s pizzicato sort of string tune,
mm-hmm.
and it's set against the immolation station.
Yeah.
Where I didn't go into it.
Sure. No, and you know what? You've just convinced me to go ahead and watch the second season. I only watched the first one, and my personal opinion is it was okay. Like it was okay. I'm a huge fan of the original. Yes. And I even loved the movie that they did in the 80s. They actually recreated the terror at 35,000 feet or whatever I don't remember how many feet it was in the sky, with William Shatner, but it was John Lithgow and all that. Like that reboot I'm not a huge fan of reboots, but like I like it when it's like homage, when it's like this. This show was I don't know. It was so different from the original that I didn't like it as much. But if they're doing the homage, I want to see it.
Yeah, and again, I think it was the best one, so awesome. I was very happy to be in that. But I think second season was a little better than first one.
I'm gonna have to check it out. You convinced me. Convinced me to jump back in. That's awesome. All right. Well, I know that you've got your piano there, and you said that you might share some stuff with us. Do you want to go ahead? Do you want to do that now?
Sure. Yeah. Why not? So the process of scoring for me, anyway, is to develop themes. And nowadays you have the kind of modern Hans Zimmer, and Hans is a wonderful musician. I mean, my God, that guy's a genius. So I'm not talking him down, but a lot of modern scores are this kind of just, whatever, Inception-y, electronic from hell.
Yeah.
Anyway, so to me, I'm not that. I mean, I can do that stuff. I don't mind doing it if it's the job, but I do like music that has lots of themes, and of course, I'm drawn to Bernard Herrmann. And in fact, in As the Earth Turns, I use some organ sounds that just these low, and all of a sudden there's almost a science fiction feel to that. When you do that. Day the Earth Stood Still, Journey to the Center of the Earth, those are classic Herrmann scores. So I really kind of relate to him more than maybe any other composer on there. Anyway, so the main theme that was also on the, let me remember this, that was also on the trailer. Whatever. That's kind of the theme, main theme on there. And then there's lots of other sections. There's jazzy stuff in here, kind of.
Yeah.
So, with kind of bluesy stuff with clarinet. Again, I tried to stay 30s on all that stuff. There's what we call tick-tock music to this day, where you kind of go. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's not difficult to create, but you have to make it kind of synchronized to what's going on and build and all the rest. It's similar to kind of trailer scoring, that sort of thing. The other main theme, and if you watch, there's a great, I think probably the best, well, there's two great scenes in the movie in my mind that I think he surpasses amateurism completely. And one of them is kind of when it's snowing in July. And that's all I'll say. It has to do with earthquakes in the White House.
Yeah.
Two-story stage, correct. People are falling. I mean,
that earthquake scene is one of my favorite. That's the camera angles in that were phenomenal too.
Yeah, and I know in the house where they did that. I mean, that's what's freaky. You go in the house, you're going, no way. He was an expert at minimal set design and understanding what you see in the lens is what the audience sees, and you don't worry about anything else. You can have, modern America on either side, but it's what's in the middle.
Yeah.
What was it? The recent Quentin Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in America. He didn't use any effects on that film when he shot all that 60s stuff. It was all about angles and picking the right signs, and that was amazing what he did, in that. So anyway, but these two scenes, there's kind of a main thing that I also have used in other things, but this kind of, the chord doesn't resolve like that. It kind of just ends. Kind of this mysterious non-ending chord like that. So to me, that's that. The magic chord that goes back with me back to Bach, and when I first started seriously compose, and I was kind of composing in a lot of Baroque style, because at that time, my girlfriend at that time was a harpsichordist, and so when you have a harpsichord, you don't have a pedal, so you can't hold chords down like that. Everything is linear.
Yeah.
So I really learned how to kind of improvise. I can do that all day. Anyway, but the chord that Bach really loved, that just, I don't know, everybody loves, it's this, what we call the seventh chord with the seventh on the bottom. And if you listen to the logo for 8 Cents Productions, my production company, That's the chord. It doesn't really resolve. I mean, normally it would like that, but and that's a very magical chord to me. So that's an example of kind of seeking out music that I'm familiar with. You know, you don't want to get too repetitive on what you do, but there's maybe 3 or 4, I think, important musical themes that come back. Now, during the earthquake, I as being a percussionist, I have things like, you know, very polyrhythmic stuff, and it's not just 3 against 2, it's 4 against 3. Like that. That's really complex to do and pull it off. And so it's fully orchestrated like that. And the closest singer to get there would be Philip Glass or Stravinsky.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, it's a major composer to pull that off. So, and I love it because it just sounds like crashing and burning of everything, you know, way too many. Charles Ives would have, Charles Ives, he actually wrote, you know, pieces where it sounded like 2 parades were going by. And when you play it, it literally sounds like that. I mean, you know, that was something I learned early in high school band and orchestra was Charles Ives stuff. So I think that probably was a good influence on me on that particular scene for sure.
That's awesome. And like we said earlier, like the soundtrack of this is just as much a character as the characters. Like it without it, like so many of the things that happen, or I guess not without it would be dead silent. Like you said, there's nothing. You don't even have
there's no hiss, but there's no anything.
But without the right music, some of those scenes wouldn't have the impact that they have. And it was just fascinating to see that and to have you here kind of explain how that works.
And the score is done well. There's a soundtrack available, which is really cool to have. And I really enjoyed writing it. And I got to thank, you know, Kim Bishop, who's to this day supporting all of these things and tremendously in many, many ways. And none of this would have happened without her and the family. Yeah. So, you know, this is a huge deal. Now, you know, bringing us to the present, the idea of having this on Turner Classic Movies tonight is absolutely off the charts astounding to me because none of us would have thought even just finishing this movie and having it in the Seattle Film Festival, that was an early goal on this one sort of thing. But to have moved it this far to a point where it's actually being accepted as true cinema, wow, you know, and again, you know, it's whatever it is. But you look at early silent films from the 20s. Again, this is a little later, but it's the same era in the end. You know what I love about the screening tonight is it's followed by Metropolis.
Oh, wow.
And there's a Metropolis feel in this film. I mean, it's got similar vibe to it. Things to come, you know. There's astounding dialogue in there. I swear to God, at one point, the Lyford plays Pax, who's the kind of crazed mad scientist. And there's a backstory that was the discovered footage, was going back in time to World War II. We didn't have that in the original cut. So it was a little jumpy. I'm scoring this. I go, what? I didn't even understand this movie.
Yeah.
And then when that got in, all of a sudden things went into place. Anyway, that particular character, when he's kind of in that scene back in World War II, he's kind of, you know, the other guy who is involved with him says, well, why are you out on the field if you're a scientist? You know, why aren't you working in the back? And he goes, I'm a scientist, not a butcher. You know, I'm thinking, where have I heard that before? You know, it's like out of Star Trek, you know.
Yeah.
I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer, you know.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of funny little things like that when you kind of analyze this movie that are very, very ahead of their time.
Right.
You know, in so many ways. So it's really fun movie to people watch, and anybody, you know, it's all ages too. So
yeah.
But I encourage anybody to watch it and watch it in context. If you can go to the website, watch, you know, look at some of the back stuff. If you can watch the doc, if somebody really hard up on watching the doc, they can email me and I'll send them a link. They can watch it too, you know.
All right.
But if you want to support the film, you know, get the DVD, which is wonderful. And in fact, the DVD is available on the TCM shop, which is great.
Nice.
And that's the best way to do it, because that tells TCM that this is an important film, and they're going to hopefully, you know, put it on, you know, a number of times in the next year or two.
That'd be great. Well, tell folks how they can find. So obviously the website for the As the Earth Turns is astheearthturns.com, but how else can they find you and more information about this?
Yeah, edhartmanmusic.com. I mean, you can Google me, you'll find me. EDHARTMAN with one N.
Yeah.
And anyway, and there's lots of links on there. I have tons. I do teach music licensing, how to get your music in film and TV. And in fact, a class is coming up on November 13th, a Saturday, 10 o'clock Pacific. And that's a great class I've been teaching for a couple decades now on how, my process of doing that. And I'm working with another platform on that, Musician Producers Association. Sorry, I can't remember his name. But that's a really cool thing. And I do a one-on-one as well. And Zoom's been great because I can share screens and all the rest of that. So anyway, those are things I can offer. I have free resources for composers and filmmakers. There's just a lot of information on there. And I've written up a number of articles on Stage 32, which is kind of Facebook for film, things like that. And I'm involved heavily in the Seattle Composers Alliance in Seattle, as well as Seattle Filmmakers, Seattle Film Summit. I've been on a lot of panels talking about this stuff. So I'm always happy to chat. Oh, and I have a podcast myself, which I'm just starting to get back into after these things are difficult. I realize it's not the podcast; it's all the editing and all the other junk you got to do. The promotion. So anyway, and I've been interviewing filmmakers, and that's gone well. There's about 12 episodes out, and then I've got them another 3. I'm ready to throw out there, and I'm looking for other filmmakers to interview about their projects.
Awesome. So
that's been great.
Yeah. Well, we might have to coordinate and throw some of them our way. We'd like to have some of those folks on our show too. Ed, thank you so much for being here. It's really exciting. Thanks for sharing the movie with me. I know you shared like some links and I got to see it. And the documentary, which was again, fascinating. So I'm really interested to see, more about this man's life. And we really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing it with us tonight. We know that you've got a busy schedule tonight, especially with the show, but thank you for spending the time with us.
Yeah. Get the popcorn, man. I mean, this is it. This is a historic moment. It really is. You just, I can't the closest thing we came up with regarding a situation like this was when Orson Welles' film The Other Side of the Wind came out a few years ago. There was an unreleased film, an unfinished film that Scorsese finished. And I haven't heard much about it. It was interesting. John Huston at a party, basically. Bizarre movie, experimental film, which is something Wells got into.
Sure.
But that was a 50-year-old thing that was sitting around. This is 80.
Yeah.
I mean, we beat the pants out of that one. So we keep coming back to Wells is all I know. So there's got to be a relationship with that somewhere.
Right.
And I think, whether Wells and Lyford ever met, I don't know. We don't have I would like to have seen that happen.
Yeah.
Because I think that would have been a fascinating thing. And I'm sure Lyford followed Wells. Absolutely. And Wells was similar because they were both independents. And one reason why, and you find out in the documentary about this, why we don't know who Richard Lyford is because of his independent nature. Yeah. And he did a lot of commercial and educational films later in life. But he did do stuff for Disney again as well, and but never really got back heavily into the narrative film. And I do know, on authority from his son, that he would have loved to have done, a great adventure movies and stuff like that, like Spielberg stuff.
Right.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think that would have been the film he would have loved to do.
Yeah.
And he loved it, and we know that he would love to watch Amazing Stories. And he was alive up through that point. So. You can see there's connections there. I'd love to see Spielberg get interested in him. I think there's a big link there.
And we kind of, I want to make one more point. Yeah, we kind of glossed over. I mean, you said it, but I don't think we really talked about it much. But he did win, or he was nominated.
He didn't win.
He nominated for an Academy Award for his documentary.
No, he didn't. He wasn't nominated. They won. The film won.
That's right.
The documentary in 1950-51. For the Titan, and it was a film about Michelangelo.
Yeah.
He was not producer. Robert Snyder was. So Robert Snyder walks away with the trophy.
The trophy, yeah.
Which is one reason I like to be a producer.
There you go.
And I got trophies, man. You look on the website, man. This As the Earth Turns won a ton of them.
Yeah.
And unbelievable ones. It's startling what they've done. And a lot of people in the Mideast and Europe and around the world have just dug this movie because it has an interesting European nature to it. There's the whole scene of the White House is, very European by nature. And my score is like that. So, but no, in fact, I made an early mistake when I was promoting that he was Academy Award winner. Then we discovered, not technically. Yeah. You got to go to the producer for that credit.
Right.
There was also one other guy involved in that movie in the documentary. What's his name? And it was narrated by Frederick March, but the other producer is not listed on here. Anyway, he did like Nanook of the North. I mean, so you have many generations involved in this Titan movie. And it's available through the Snyder Foundation and all the rest of that stuff. It's fascinating. And one of the great reasons I think it did well was Lyford was a tremendous editor.
Yeah.
And he knew how to deal with this because this film was somewhat involved with a German film. And before it was kind of a recut from footage and things like that. And then Richard did some spectacular filming in the museums and the places where it was. And there's a scene I put a tiny one in there. I didn't really talk too much about, but Chris assured me that this amazing scene of the light falling its way up the staircase, very unique kind of a filming thing, was a real moment in that film. It's in the Academy Archive, and it was like one of the first documentaries that was put on broadcast television. So, Lyford was always in the peripheral of what's going on. Sure. I know for a fact that when he did one of his animal documentaries and one for a Live Color, it was like really highly rated in the ratings that week against Patton, which was the all-time winner at that time. So he still managed to eke out a huge win on that for One for Old of Disney, those animal films.
Yeah,
it was that well done. And I know that Walt Disney knew his storytelling abilities well. And he told Chris at one point, he said, his independence is really what makes him special. And that Richard Lyford could tell the story of how trains work in 20 minutes better than any filmmaker he knew. Mm. That's a hell of a compliment from Walt Disney, who's probably considered the all-time filmmaker, in history. So again, why we don't know who this guy is fascinating in itself. But I think this is the start, hopefully, and having a platform like TCM get interested in this, pretty mind-boggling, for that.
Well, I wish you the best of luck in the future. I think it is fascinating. I will be watching closely. We'll definitely want to have you on if the biopic starts to come together. We'd love to follow that process because that fascinates me, that kind of stuff. But thanks again for sharing with us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I appreciate it. And stay geek out there.
We will. Thank you. And thank you guys for watching another episode of The Podcast is Real. I do want to go, before we go, remind you that Extra Life is this weekend, November 5th through 6th. We will be broadcasting live right here on YouTube from basically about 7:30 p.m. Friday night all the way through 8 p.m. Saturday night. Utah will be continuing then until Sunday morning. All of that is for a good cause. It's for Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital and Children's Miracle Network hospitals. We're raising money for them. So please tune in for that, because we will also, like I said before, be giving away a Stadia Premiere Edition in our Road to 4K. And I'll explain all of that on Thursday night. So you're going to want to, or Friday night, you're going to want to be there 7:30 when we go live. I will launch that promotion. You can find out how you can win that. So we're going to do that then. Thanks again for joining us. We appreciate you being a part of our Sunday night. Thanks for spending the time with us. If you're listening to us on the podcast, we appreciate that as well. Don't forget to follow us on all the socials. You can find out what's going on, learn about who our guests are, and get some behind the scenes stuff on all of those things. We're at World Gone Geek pretty much everywhere. So that's how to find us. Thanks, guys. We'll see you guys on Tuesday for game night. Have a good one.
The Podcast is Real is a World Gone Geek production.